Hi, welcome back to WFP Reviews, looking at classic British productions you should see or see again. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe to show your support. This time, we look at Tunes of Glory, a compelling yet lesser-known character drama from 1960. Perhaps struck by its dark psychology, it was a favorite of Alfred Hitchcock, who called it, quotes, one of the finest films ever made. Today, we'll go over the story and some casting facts, while discussing why it's a movie that's worth your time. Starring the powerhouse duo of Alec Guinness and John Mills, Tunes of Glory is a military-themed film. However, this army story has no big wartime battles. Instead, the conflict is a high-stakes battle of wills. It centers on the fictional clash of two senior officers to control their Highland battalion that's now back in barracks after World War II. Notably playing against type, and more on that later, Alec Guinness is Jacques St. Clair. With fierce red hair and a Scottish brogue, he's a rough-around-the-edges soldier who has risen from piper to colonel during World War II to command his unit. But now that peace has broken out, Jock is set to be replaced by Colonel Barrow. Barrow is a career officer and military lecturer with a long family connection to the regiment. Portrayed by John Mills, again against type, Barrow is a genteel man. He suffered torture as a prisoner of war, but dreamed of commanding this unit, which was once led by his grandfather. And, inevitably, Barrow's arrival triggers a clash at the top, with definite overtones of a class system conflict. Jock's the right leader to take a hill in combat, but he lacks the tact for HQ politics during peacetime.
McKinnon!
Colonel?
For God's sake, smoke that bloody thing like a man. Stop puffing at it like a ruddy debutante.
Barrow is a man with strong views on leadership and military decorum, but may lack the inner strength to assert his control. Resenting his polished replacement, Jock exploits this as he stubbornly butts against Barrow authority.
I'm all in favor of good traditions.
I've always let the pipers wear pretty well what they please at band practice.
Because you've let them wear what they like, Jock, doesn't make it a tradition.
Naturally, this clash of alpha wannabes is carefully watched by the other officers, and it begins to divide them into two camps. What's clear is that it's not easy leading a group of veteran fighting men, especially if you are an outsider with new ideas. And, with pointed irony, a major point of conflict becomes the new colonel's views on Highland dancing. It's a situation that reminds me of Captain Queeg and his obsession with missing strawberries in the Caine Mutiny. In both cases, something trivial becomes something of decisive importance. Barrow insists his men abandon the wild Highland style that many prefer, and this leads to a dramatic test of his leadership and how his officers see him. Tunes of Glory was based on a novel by a former officer of the Gordon Highlanders, James Kennaway, who also did the screenplay. Kennaway did a brilliant job of balancing his characters, shading them with both positive and negative traits. Jock, who gets the most screen time, is impulsive and boorish, yet his character is softened in scene with his men, his feisty actress girlfriend, played wonderfully by Kay Walsh, and his daughter Morag, played by Susanna York. Likewise, Barrow is sympathetic as he struggles with his hard choices, and in moments of reflection, with a captain played by Gordon Jackson. As things proceed, Kennaway's finely drawn characterizations really pay off as the story reaches its tragic conclusion, giving us sympathy for both men, even as their rivalry consumes them. At this point, let's also look at the pivotal role of Charlie Scott, played with aloof dispassion by Dennis Price. The rest of this review does contain some spoilers, so be warned if you haven't seen the film. Scott is a smooth man who is too savvy to openly take sides. Clearly too polished to support the lowbrow jock, Scott chooses to wait and see if Barrow really has the stuff to be worthy of command and his loyalty. Scott is also very enigmatic, and while he never shows his motivations, we suspect they could be driven by ambitions of his own. Soon Barrow's leadership is tested as Jock faces military discipline for striking a soldier. But as events resolve, Barrow's indecision and humiliation will actually drive him to suicide, with the blame largely falling to Jock and his stubborn insubordination. However, what really drives poor Barrows over the edge is the surgical cruelty of Scott. He gives a disdainful speech, underlining that Barrow has lost the respect of the men he so craved to command.
Do you really think that's why I made this decision?
My dear Colonel, we didn't know you'd made any decision.
But you must have heard the matter's not to go to brigade.
Yes, we heard that.
Well?
But we thought that was Jock's decision.
The Colonel's reaction is fatal and immediate. That brings us to the final scene of Tunes of Glory, the one part of the film I've struggled with. Jock was a hard wartime leader and no stranger to death, but guilt from Barrow's suicide suddenly pushes him into despair and even the edge of madness. This change is very abrupt and largely out of character, and it seems to arise to help dramatically end the story. But that said, Jock's collapse is more feasible as we learn more about PTSD. It's not impossible for seemingly invulnerable people to snap. Also, looking at the body, Jock talks about ghosts, knowing he was dishonorable and that his own career will forever carry a stain.
What have I done?
So, as he was while winning an Oscar as Colonel Nicholson in Bridge on the River Kwai, Guinness is once again a senior officer driven to breakdown due to stubbornness and the strains of command. As mentioned at the opening, Tunes of Glory doesn't have big action scenes or much romance, and the film was not a box office success when released. But the movie really deserves to be seen as a great acting showcase. In interviews, director Ronald Neame insists his job was not fancy camera moves, but to keep the focus on his actors, and that's exactly what he did. With its intimate setting in the officers' mess, watching Tunes of Glory is like enjoying a marvelous play as Mills, Guinness, and the brilliant supporting cast all take the stage. And speaking of acting, one thing this film is known for was the casting of Guinness and Mills. Having played the by-the-book Colonel Nicholson in Kwai, Sir Alec was offered the role of the uptight Barrow, which he turned down, basically saying, "I've already played that part." Guinness said he'd appear in the film, but only as the firebrand Jock Sinclair. Guinness then suggested that John Mills play the role of Barrow. When the director pointed out that Mills always played lower ranks in his many military roles, Guinness retorted, "Well, he's an actor, isn't he?" And the casting worked brilliantly. And for the record, later Mills played very senior British commanders, including General Kitchener and Field Marshal Haig. So if you're tired of current movies obsessed with special effects at the cost of living, breathing characters, I heartily recommend Tunes of Glory. It's an actor's showcase and features some nice bagpiping too. Tunes of Glory is available on Criterion DVD, streaming services, and sometimes free here on YouTube. As always, thanks for watching. Please do comment and come back again soon to Walt's Flicks Picks.